Lascan Corlin. Thanks, Minister Ross, for attending in person. It's much appreciated because I need your cooperation in a matter of some importance. I have written to you today, actually, in relation to this formally, Minister. I've also written to the CEO of the IAA, and I had written to Minister Donoghue in his capacity as Minister for Finance over the Revenue Commissioners, but he responded to say it's very much your responsibility. So my topical issue concerns the proposed removal of security screening derogation for customs officers stationed at Dublin and other customs approved national airports with effect from the 30th of January, which is next week. So I need your assistance in this, Minister. You may not be fully appraised maybe of some of the issues concerned here. In your reply to my PQ, which you came back pretty speedily with on the 16th of January, you stated that the enhanced procedures that I was asking about were decided by your department and adopted by the National Civil Aviation Authority on the basis of risk assessment by the Irish Aviation Authority, the IAA, which has responsibility for regulating aviation security in Ireland. And you further stated that a number of reviews, audits of security practices and procedures at the state airports pointed to the need to make more improvements. I'm just wondering if you had read those reports, and can you confirm to the House whether or not state-employed customs enforcement officers were ever identified in any of those reports as a risk to the security of the national airports? Because I want to advise the House, Lascan Corlin, that I've been reliably informed that customs, who are a law enforcement agency of this state, have not or never have been identified as a risk to aviation security in any IAA report or in the 2015 National Aviation Policy, and neither in the 2017 Security Audit Review at Dublin Airport. So I'd like you to respond to those specifically. You quote in your PQ response to me from an EC regulation that all persons other than passengers, together with their items carried, shall be screened upon entering critical parts of security restricted areas in order to prevent prohibited articles from being introduced into these parts. So do you and your department then, Minister, intend fully implementing this regulation to include all law enforcement agencies, customs, An Garda Síochána, airport police and Irish Defence Forces? Because this is not what is intended to apply from next week. And are you aware, Minister, that all law enforcement officers, including customs, comply fully at the moment with all EU and IAA regulations? In 2018, the DAA confirmed that their UK traffic increased to almost 10.1 million passengers, and the impact of Brexit now means that an additional 10.1 million passengers will, from the end of March potentially, become third country passengers, thus increasing the burden of EU customs controls for passenger traffic at Irish airports and particularly obviously at Dublin. So why, Minister, would you impose such security measures in the midst of Brexit, when customs enforcement will be entering into possibly one of the busiest periods in recent times, and again with no aviation security risk attached to them? So, to summarise just for the moment, in the absence of any identifiable risk to aviation security by customs officers, I would request an immediate deferral of the implementation date of the 30th of January, pending further clarification as to the level of this associated risk. Because the work carried out by customs enforcement officers, Lascan Corlin, isn't confined solely to airside operations. Customs officers have to move between airside and landside throughout the course of their shift on any given day, sometimes multiple times. And the implementation of these changes will impose further impediments on customs officers carrying out their duties on behalf of the state. Thanks, Lascan.
Minister, 4 minutes.
I'd like to thank Deputy Lahart for raising this matter, and I understand his concerns, and particularly maybe the concerns of the inconvenience that caused to customs officers and others who are affected by the regulations. Aviation security is a highly regulated area to which international agreements and EU rules and regulations apply. And elements of it are, naturally enough, highly confidential, which means that I'm restricted in what I can say in this debate, and I'm sure the Deputy will understand that, and indeed I'm restricted in what I know. What I can advise the House is that aviation security remains a priority area at national and EU level. It is under constant review and scrutiny in response to new intelligence on threats and risks, and Ireland is obliged to play its part in the international effort to make flying as secure and as safe as possible. If we aspire to be a highly connected nation, we need to make sure that our international airports are up to international best standards in security terms. The last decade and more has seen a huge step up in how airports and aircraft are secured, and that is for the benefit of all, even if it has introduced some inconvenience to some. That is always the balance that needs to be struck, the level of inconvenience versus doing what needs to be done to make sure people are safe. The reality is that aviation security is a highly regulated area by international agreements, under the UN's International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, and under the European regulations, and the state is committed to implementing the best international practice in this field. In Ireland, the National Civil Aviation Security Programme sets the standards for civil aviation security. This programme reflects what is required under EU Regulation 300/2008. The security programme is reviewed and updated annually by the National Civil Aviation Security Committee, which includes a number of government departments, including the Revenue Commissioners, and Garda Síochána, and the Defence Forces, state airports, and the main airlines operating in Ireland. In accordance with the agreed 2018 security programme, which provided for enhanced airport security measures on the 1st of June 2018, my department issued notice that the long-held access to exemptions of revenue officials and the airport police were to be revoked and replaced with new screening procedures. Work has been ongoing at the airports in preparation for the introduction of the new procedures, which take effect from the 30th of January 2019, as the Deputy knows. What this means in practice is that these staff will no longer have unchecked access to the designated secure areas of the airport. Rather, they will have to undergo security checks. It will be a quick and streamlined process with special facilities provided. The Deputy should be aware that this is not an arbitrary step. It is part of a programme of security enhancements, and the specific measures which we are talking about this evening have been subject to detailed risk assessment by the Irish Aviation Authority, which is responsible for regulating aviation security in Ireland. Moreover, the measures were also informed by findings and recommendations contained in a confidential report by the Paris-based European Civil Aviation Conference, which was invited to review and audit security arrangements at Dublin Airport in early 2018. It has been made quite clear to all involved that personnel will continue to be exempt from security screening if they are responding to any emergency situation without any delay. The department has been in regular communications with revenue management, airport management and the airport police, and a lot of work has been undertaken at all of the airports to communicate the procedures and protocols which will be put in place. The introduction of these new measures will improve security practice at our airport, which is in everybody's best interests.
I got 2 minutes.
Everybody except the customs officers have been engaged with, and this isn't a matter of inconvenience, Minister, so I really need you to engage with me here because this deadline is 8 days away. Seriously now. Customs officials are authorised officers of the Revenue Commissioners and authorised officers of Customs and Excise. They have legislation which exempts them from search under Section 25 of the Customs Act 2015 and other legislation. Customs officers became aware that they will be searched by a private security company known as the Airport Search Unit, ASU, employed by the DAA at Dublin Airport. Customs officers have the same exemption, Minister, as on Garda Síochána and Army personnel, so why aren't they included? And in the case of a port or an airport, have powers that far exceed those personnel in the jurisdiction of the airport. And they've been exempt from search at Dublin Airport since the foundation of the state. For reasons yet to be explained, their exemptions are about to be withdrawn but remain in place for Gardaí and Army personnel. And Dublin Airport is the place of work for customs officers. So what would happen if a Garda officer, Minister, had to be searched by a private security each time they entered their Garda station or any Garda station? And as of now, Minister, or under these new guidelines, an off-duty Garda can pass through security at Dublin Airport without being searched, while a customs officer cannot, as and from the 31st of January. The role of the customs officer involves access to all areas of Dublin Airport, landside and airside. They cross these lines numerous times a day to deal with a variety of situations. Security screening can potentially interfere with court evidence because this decision affects dog handlers, customs officers' transportation vans, cargo customs officers who bring suspected narcotics through security on a very regular basis. And this is not, to the best of my understanding, applicable in other EU airports. What is the purpose, Minister, of a private security company, not the state security agencies? If it was a Garda search, it would be one thing. What's the purpose of a private security company searching an enforcement officer in the course of their duties? So I'm asking you to go back to the department, ask for a report, because there's a question mark being placed over the role and the integrity of customs officers, who are one of the first line of defence in our country. Last year, of course, an important issue in terms of preventing narcotics, in terms of preventing illegal drugs coming into the country, illegal cigarettes, which would have an impact on the retail trade, etc. And I thank you for the previous speaker went 45 seconds over. So it's a question of justice and a question of fair play, and I'm asking and appealing to the Minister if you could go back, review this, and particularly the implementation date of the 31st of January. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy, for repeating a lot of what you said before, and I understand the emphasis in which you're putting this. And what I'd say about the other categories which you mentioned, it's quite clear that personnel will continue to be exempt from security screening if they are responding to any emergency situation. So there won't be an effect there. But I'm absolutely determined that I shouldn't be involved in the minutiae of security at Dublin Airport or any other airport, because that's not my position. And it's not my position to tell them whether to use a private security firm or any other type of security. That is a matter for themselves. And I am constrained on what I can say about security. I'm also constrained in what I know about security, because I'm not privy to the way they operate it on a very detailed fashion. Perhaps I could be if I asked that question, but it's not a question which I would normally ask, and I'm inclined to ask. But what I say to the Deputy is this, that this particular procedure and the lifting of that particular exemption is made on the recommendation of reputable bodies and a reputable review, and it brings security up to a higher standard. It is absolutely sorry, Deputy. I'm finishing now.
Sorry.
I didn't interrupt.
Minister, that interruption.
And I'm determined not to interfere with any security measures which bring it up to a higher standard. What I will do is I will mention the points which you've made to my officials and see if they carry any particular weight in the light of the fact that it's got about 14 days to go.